Hello, everybody, and welcome to another IFTA panel discussion. And this afternoon, I am delighted to be discussing The Dry, which is an 8-part original series, which will premiere on March 1st on RTE1. And I'm delighted to be joined today by writer, award-winning playwright and screenwriter Nancy Harris, our new girl and Dates she's known for, and director and acclaimed filmmaker Paddy Brannock, who's an IFTA winner, and we know him from Viva and Rosie, among so many others. And then also executive producer Emma Norton, known for The Lobster, Room and Conversation with Friends, The Killing of a Sacred Deer. It goes on, and she works with Element Films. So guys, you're all very welcome, and thank you for taking the time to talk with us today.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah,
happy to be here.
Great to see you. And look, congratulations. It's a wonderful, wonderful drama series. And I know the audience will really tune in and really enjoy this, and it builds and builds. So it's a credit to you all. So I'm delighted to open up a little bit of a discussion about the making of this and behind the scenes. And before I kickstart into it, I want to say to you, Paddy, in the first instance, because just before we go into The Dry, at the moment we're on a high, talking about Oscars and on Colin Kuhn for the what was the foreign language film category, and it is now international best film. And you have huge experience of that, because you were, if I can recall, in terms of who we as the Academy have submitted in the past, with Viva, and you were the director, and it was a Spanish-made film in Cuba, but you were the only others to have been shortlisted down to the final. I think then you were actually shortlisted down to the final 15.
Yeah.
Sorry, the final 11.
We were in the final 9.
Final 9, very good.
We were tipped.
Again.
We were tipped to go through, but we didn't. So
well,
yeah.
it was a very competitive year.
Yeah, but it's great. You know, it's obviously a sign of, I suppose, a culmination of talent in the industry, that there's so much going on in the awards season for Irish talent. You know, and it's so there's always the feeling, I think, is that, like, we mightn't obviously have this level every year, but I think it's not a surprise to have a presence there every year, because there's so much happening, and there's so many great actors and writers and directors and craftspeople, you know, so it's a good time.
It's a good time. And look, it's been building and building from an industry point of view. So I think everybody's doing tremendous work across the board, the film, the drama, and so we can all be proud. But I'm excited for you guys now launching this. So it's a story of Shiv Sheridan, who's played by Roisin Gallagher, a woman who she's returned back to Ireland after living in London for quite some time, and she's now sober and has a lot of good intentions to keep it that way. And after kind of living it up in London, as you do when you're much younger, and then she's back home, and maybe people are trying to adjust to all of that, and she's trying to adjust to how people are taking that, and it's a very interesting dynamic with the family. So I suppose the first thing, Emma, is to talk. I suppose maybe going to you, Nancy, first would be to talk about the concept, because The Dry, everybody talks about it in Ireland. Are you on the dry? Oh, I'm on the dry. And so we know that as a concept, but nobody's really taken it on in terms of looking at it in the dynamic that you have. So just tell us the origins of where that came about, and how you came to have the confidence to write such an interesting, funny, uplifting and still dark drama around this whole subject matter.
Well, it's a long story short is that I wanted to write a family show, and it struck me that I hadn't seen one in a while, and alcoholism is something that I know about. I've had personal experience with family members and relationships, and both in a very serious way, and also there has been humor, because in my family there's quite a number of luckily sober people, but none of them got sober in the same way. Some of them went to recovery meetings and did the full 12 steps, and then other members just gave up the booze and said, just give up the booze and that problem solved. You don't need to go to recovery meetings. And there was kind of an interesting tension between the two kind of factions, because the people in the recovery meetings felt that those that had just gone dry drunks were just dry drunks, and the people who were dry drunks felt the people in recovery were narcissists who wanted to talk about themselves, and everybody just had their own take on this subject. Meanwhile, it was a very serious thing. And so I just felt there was a really interesting tension to really look at it through a family prism, to look at all the ways we judge addiction, but also how we judge our families, how we arrive at ideas of truth. And I sort of wanted to, well, Paddy and I were talking about, we talked about this a lot actually, that if you took alcoholism completely off the table, what would it be a show about? And we were like, well, it's a show about somebody trying to change. And the hardest place to change is in our family, because we all have roles. And if one person suddenly decides they don't want to occupy that role anymore, it puts a mirror up to everybody else. So in a way, Shiv is sober. She is an alcoholic. She's very vulnerable, but she's also arriving with all this kind of language of recovery and honesty, and which is a sort of a catalyst to her whole family that are navigating life by absolutely not facing anything. And she sort of explodes them. And within that, we then thought, well, how can we look at all their stories, where they're all at in their lives? They range in age from 25 to the parents who are in their 60s or 70s. So that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to tell a family story that kind of dealt with something very serious, but in a fun way that allowed us to be light and shade and to be honest as much as possible.
Yes. Well, and you do it so brilliantly. And so tell us a little bit about, so that's great in terms of knowing that you wanted to do that and bring that all together. What was that like in terms of developing the characters? Because there's quite interesting and really dynamic characters in this, and putting that on the pages and making it work. In that, how long did it take you? What was the process, even briefly?
Briefly is not a word we would use with this process.
It's labor of love.
Labor of love that went on.
Labor of love.
I mean, well, I thought it was 2016 that we started, and I found notes in my phone from 2015. So
yeah,
the
first pitch came to us in 2015, and Nancy, we were working with Nancy on something else at that time, but this came along, and it has all the flavor that the end show had, but she just wrote this really great one-pager about this family, the Sheridans, and all of their kind of pain and buried issues that they weren't dealing with, and alcoholism. And it just seemed like such a winning, a kind of winning format, really, to be quite cynical about it. I thought Nancy's a great writer, and a family show that tackles drink and recovery in an Irish setting, to me, seemed really commercial and exciting and kind of universally sellable. So that was why in 2015 it was exciting, but it also meant that kind of certainty about it over the 8 years that followed, it never slipped. Like, there were a lot of challenges along the way of getting this financed, and so that kind of confidence in that initial idea, that never slipped. And
you seized the opportunity once there. I remember you telling me about you were at a meeting with BritBox and they slipped something in and you jumped on it.
Yeah, so the reality is that we had support initially from RTE, and over the years, and that support was great, and we then got support from Screen Ireland when they started backing television. And that was brilliant. And we knew that hopefully we would be able to go for BAI funding and get the Section 481, and all of that kind of money from Ireland would be available to us. But it was never going to be enough to fully finance the series. So then we went around the UK trying to find a partner that would work, that could work well with RTE and not overlap. And we came across a lot of, we've already got our Irish show. We've already got a show with an Irish character. we've already got a show with an Irish character who's drinking, or we've already got a show with an Irish character who's 35, and we were like, oh my God.
Yeah, I think there's some connection with the Irish and this particular subject matter for a long time, so it was hard to avoid it.
But the funny thing was, you know, those shows sort of either came or never came around, and were in fact very different to what we were doing. But it felt like, you know, we just had to keep going and keep sort of steady. And this is the truth with all these things. Eventually, all you need is one commissioner who gets it, you know, and sees the potential. But BritBox in the UK had started relatively recently, and they were very known for male-centric crime shows. That's kind of what they were commissioning. And they had a conversation with some colleagues when they said, oh, we actually really could do with something female-centric with a woman involved. And I said, aha, I have exactly the thing.
My
and
back pocket.
I've got it in my pocket. So it was pure dogged kind of just keeping going, talking to all the commissioners and keeping the sort of enthusiasm. And then eventually we met, Kaylee Jealous was at BritBox at the time, and she loved it. She thought it was hilarious, and she loved the characters, and she connected with all the characters and the siblings. She really sort of saw herself in that group of people. And that then led to all of the money kind of coming to place. But from a kind of producing point of view, you know, we kept supporting Nancy to write more scripts. We kept building the show, going, at some point we're going to make this. And each script we got just got funnier and better and deeper.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask, is that because it's obviously, you know, you're up and down, you have a positive on one element, but you've got to bring everybody to the water. You've got to keep, you know, and so you're going to have moments of doubt about, you know, the script in itself and what can you do to improve it, and probably trying to adjust to, you know, the feedback from the various contenders, the various funders who might say, well, if it was a bit more of this and that. But what you ultimately wound up with was such a well-developed and funny and intuitive script that, you know, at least, you know, it might have been a long time coming, but it's certainly there in the end. It is really well produced. What was that like for you then, as well, you know, from Nancy, from the writing point of view? How many times over that period that you had to go back and adjust, or did it become your friend at that stage? You were sitting down with a glass of wine and saying, okay, where are we going now with it?
So I actually feel, in a way, I wasn't in development hell. It took a long time to get made, but I was absolutely allowed to write what I wanted. And I do completely credit Emma with that and Element, because they utterly supported my voice, and they went, if this is really what you want to write, then we will back it. And RTE had commissioned the pilots and had really loved the pilots, but we couldn't, the first two, but we didn't have the money we had to get other producers, and Element, just because they loved it, they gave me the money to write the next scripts. And so it was a bit of a situation where I was writing for the first four, I sort of wrote them quite instinctively. But in my head, because it was such a long process, I had the characters became very alive and very real for me. And then the challenge was handing them to Paddy, who was so brilliant. But it's that kind of huge, like, that's why that relationship with Paddy is so important, and I'm so grateful for it, is because I'd lived with this for so long that to hand it over to somebody who I didn't think completely got it and wanted it to be the best it could be would have been really hard. So I think that's where we had 4 scripts by the time you came in, didn't we, Paddy?
Yeah. And at what stage, Paddy, did you come into this? Was it Emma that kind of said to you, would you be interested in looking at this? And I suppose after Rosie as well, you were so dynamic in what you achieved with that. A Dublin story that was a difficult story, and you really made it. You personalized it. You really gave room for the characters to build and develop. So obviously Emma thought you were right for the project. And so tell us how that came about.
Well, I mean, the experience on Rosie and working with Emma and Rory was fantastic. And I kind of really, I mean, it's great when you're kind of working in a situation where you're still feeling you're learning as well, you know, which was great. And so I felt very comfortable going into it because of that. And then when I met Nancy and we started talking about it, I felt, well, not I felt, but it became obvious quickly enough that it was a very good, constructive conversations that we were having. And that was fun as well, actually. There was kind of, you know, I know Element bring a great rigor to the process, which I appreciate because I'm not rigorous. Well, I can be rigorous, but
you're very rigorous.
I need that little bit of
Very
me out,
rigorous.
you know. So, but there's a rigor there, but it comes, and with Nancy as well, and I think Nancy's sense of fun about it as well, and ownership and knowledge of what she's written, but also the sense of fun that she can hold that in a light way, meant it was just a very creative conversation and space to be working in. So quickly, Nancy was able to, and Emma able to involve me in it in a way that I felt I was contributing, and that it became a sort of dialectical thing where we were bouncing off each other, and it was growing. And also in that process, you kind of, if it's a good process, you begin to absorb the voices of, say, Nancy in that process, which is great when you go on set, because you sort of feel the history of the thing, you understand it, you understand why things have a value, and in a deeper way. You know, it's not just about your take on it. It's the take of the group, and that sort of communal group ownership of something, which is always much nicer to do and much better fun. But also, I think it gives a richness to something. You know, you get
Fantastic.
more out of it. So,
well, and that's interesting, Paddy. Yes, to talk about the collaboration, and so that would have probably taken. Did some of that take place obviously over COVID in terms of and so? Because what you're describing there and what we can see on screen is a really great creative collaboration between the director and the writer, and bringing that across. How difficult was it for you?
And the producers as well.
And the producers,
of course. All of it in that. And also, it was unusual that Nancy wrote the whole series and that I directed the whole series, which gives another aspect, because you sort of, in everything, you know where it's going to land. You know, there's that feeling of saying, okay, it's heading to that point. So when you're doing something early in the story, you're sort of, you're measuring that against where you want it to go or what feelings you want it to have, you know?
Yes.
So it was really it was brilliant from that point of view to be able to do that.
And had you met beforehand, or was it over Zoom for the first time?
Zoom.
Everything was Zoom.
Zoom for the
We
first
met
time.
once in a hotel. We had the kind of quite late, like about a month before filming the first in person, and it was very
we'll probably
strange.
all look back, and we'll probably all look back and be thankful for so many things like that, because it made it very personal, you know, and you had your own space. You weren't sitting around a table with other people taking notes, perhaps in many instances. But so tell me about the shoot. You shot this when exactly?
Emma, do you want to, your memory?
2021. So we shot in it was August. I think it was August. It was sort of August, September, October.
Yeah.
It's 9 weeks.
Remember, we finished the beginning of October, I think.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. So you got an 8-part series in that space of time.
All by one director. Paddy did the whole thing in one block.
It was a tight enough.
It was.
Tight shoot. But they're always, like, it's kind of weird. You always say it was a tight shoot, but I've never been in a shoot where you're not kind of trying to get that last shot. You know, that's always the way.
The good thing, Paddy, is you're even looking more distinguished now from the extra few
Thanks
grey
very much.
hairs.
Do you mean grayer?
More distinguished.
Thank you very much. I'll take that.
But
I think it's worth saying. Sorry to cut across you.
So Emma, between you guys, obviously the casting was so important, you know, for this. And each of the characters, I'm like Shiv Sheridan, played by Roisin Gallagher. Let me just even have a look. Pam Boyd plays Bernie. Ciarán Hinds, the wonderful, incredibly talented Ciarán Hinds, seasoned veteran of the screen, brings so much to this as well. Siobhan Cullen wonderful actress, originally as Caroline Sheridan, the sister, and Mo Dumford. So Paddy, you'd worked with Mo Dumford before, and obviously Element, and so Mo, is
Right.
such a great talent. He shines on screen, basically, and Sheridan as well played Adam Richardson. So a great lineup, a great mix. So tell us about that casting process, and where did it start? Who was first that you wanted to land? Obviously, Roisin, probably.
Well, we started with Roisin. It was really we were casting across them, but I suppose our attention, we knew that we had to get that right. So a lot of attention went on that, wasn't it?
Yeah, we started with Shiv, but I think we sort of had Caroline running in slight tandem.
Yeah.
Because some of the people that were in the Caroline list got pulled over to the Shiv list. There was a bit of moving around.
And also we did chemistry readings early enough as well.
Yeah.
when we
In a way, so
It was
much had to hinge around Shiv that we needed to know.
Yeah.
In a strange way, she's the character that carries the actual comedy drama element, because she's the whole stakes of the thing. So we needed to get some sense of who we would get for that in order to be able to place everybody else kind of tonally, I think.
I think you're right. There was a huge emphasis at the time, I remember saying the tone of that and how casting somebody would affect the tone of everything else around that, yeah. And I think Roisin was, when we she wasn't very well known, but her initial read was really, really a clever, smart read. She really got the material and was able to eke out all of the little bits of comedy in it and pathos, and she was really fantastic, actually. So quite early on, and I suppose because we didn't know her, she surprised us as well. It was something that was fresh, and it's not the same as if somebody's in their 30s, it's different than finding somebody fresh in their 19 or 20, because you expect that. But at that stage, it's a different reaction, and she really impressed us.
And she was up against a lot of well-known actors, the very fine actors, and I think that it was really interesting seeing how she could, even in those early reads, do exactly what Paddy's talking about with the tone, is sort of hit the kind of humor, or allow for humor, or encourage comedy, but then do all of the kind of deeper, darker stuff, or be vulnerable and kind of and natural, so she was managing to kind of encapsulate the breadth of what Nancy had written in the scripts, and that was the kind of magic of that.
Yeah, but we were quite rigorous about it, and we were sort of asking lots of questions, how will she work in this situation, how will she work in that situation, and which was great, because once you're having those conversations at that stage, it actually feeds back in to how you're going to make it, because you're beginning to ask yourself the questions that you need to have asked when you get on set, and that sort of ability to do it with a reference point, like a casting tape, suddenly opens it all out. Does she bring enough danger? Does she bring enough? All of the different aspects that you might want to have begin to get discussed, and that has an effect. It probably feeds into script a little bit, and it feeds into definitely my approach.
Yes.
Because it's beginning to define the thing, I suppose, at that stage. It's exciting as well, when you get to that.
Yeah. Fantastic. And obviously for you, Nancy, you obviously had the opportunity to also kind of get a feel for who was best suited to those characters that you wrote. It just sounds like you had a great collaborative approach to it, which was wonderful, and that's why it's so successful. And really, I suppose it's the process of making it, and from what I understand, it was really good fun as well, because you're saying overall, how many weeks overall, roughly?
So it was 9-week shoot.
A 9-week shoot.
Yeah.
And even for people like Ciarán Hinds, he was saying things like, when he was on Game of Thrones, or when he's been in other dramas, he pockets in, for different episodes, etc. And this was the first time that he was in, right across the board in a drama, that he really got to feel part of the start to finish storyline. And even though I know it might have been, if I understand correctly, it might have been shot in different sequences. Yeah, and tell us, is that something, Paddy, that you deliberately did? Was it from an economical point of view, you know, when you had certain casts together, etc.?
Well,
and lockdown, obviously.
We ended up largely being able to kind of shoot, we didn't shoot chronologically, but we kind of shot a lot of the first 4 episodes, and then we shot the second 4. And that was because the second 4 began to feature a couple of locations. So it was really dictated by location. So we did the sort of, a lot of it happens in the Sheridan house. So we shot about 3 or 4 weeks in that house, and then we took a couple of weeks break and traveled around to smaller locations, went back to the house for another couple of weeks, and then went to the final art gallery location, which is a big thing. And whatever way it played out, it enabled us to keep a little bit of a chronology in it, which, if you can do, is absolutely fantastic, because it's you can feel the thing building a little bit more, and the characters get to know where they're going and where they are in those early episodes, without having to jump into something that's happening at the end. So it was a sort of, we were lucky, you know.
Also, it helped, I think, Roisin, because you're basically telling the story of an unraveling addict.
Yeah.
Come back in a certain headspace, and through her entire family gets into another headspace. And it's sort of, I think that was quite crucial to you in terms of the journey for Roisin. Through the filming, I think.
It was. It's a big help, and we were lucky. Like, it wasn't absolutely in that way, but we were moving that way. And Kieran, then we had to lose him for a couple of weeks in the middle of it. But we had him across the span of the whole thing, and he was brilliant, because, you know, he's a fantastic actor, and he has a sort of, I suppose, international respect, and yet he folded into our world and our kind of not very luxurious green rooms and all that. That's not a criticism, Emma. Okay.
Yeah, it's the standard that you'll be receiving in all future productions.
But it is an interesting thing that I wouldn't have necessarily known in conceiving the show, that actually to ask people to do an ensemble piece is quite tricky and requires a certain level of generosity on the part, especially of somebody like Kieran Hines, who's so that they're going to accept that for everybody's story to shine, there will be times where they're foregrounded and not. And they were all so brilliant at doing that and being generous for one another.
Absolutely. And well, Kieran, probably people are surprised to know, because obviously Kieran is so he's achieved so much, and he's such a well-respected actor worldwide, but he's such a gentleman as well. So in the mix of all that, it gives a great confidence. I know when we talked to him, you know, he did a lovely masterclass with us last year. We also talked to him around the time of Belfast and all of that collaboration. You know, you were talking about you know, the collaboration between your cast and making sure that there was almost a chemistry test and all that. But there's no doubt that when they all got together like that, it sounds like there was great fun. And because, you know, they knew where the character and where it was going to end up.
The characters are fun, and you know, which is great. And they were all a really lovely cast, so it was brilliant. But I think you know, obviously the atmosphere, you tried to create an atmosphere that's good to work in. But I think the subject matter and the characters and the sort of treatment of it definitely adds to it, because it's like you're looking forward to doing that scene. You know, you're looking forward to that moment. And even the crew, I think, definitely they really enjoyed it, I think, actually, and they enjoyed hearing it, and the performances. I know that. To the extent I tend to be a bit more hard arse around it, and I'm sort of, you know, you still have to finish the day, and you don't want to sort of start patting yourself on the back or anyone else on the back before it's finished. But I always got that sense from the crew that they were enjoying hearing it, you know, and they're a good barometer, because they've seen a lot of performances, so they you know,
And Nancy, for you, I'm like, in a sense, you know, it's an Irish show for an Irish audience. And I think what's wonderful, a story like this, that I think it's really going to resonate in Ireland as a really engaging drama, and that people will talk about and will love and will really get, you know, your characters and your storyline. So that's meant a lot to you, and obviously you're excited about next Wednesday, March 1st.
Yeah, well, actually, it's interesting because the thing that I most was excited about this was for the fact that I felt I could write an Irish show, and a show that went dark the way I know Irish, my friends, and, you know, that had a dark humor, that wasn't sentimentalizing Ireland, that wasn't letting us off the hook anywhere, that wanted to tell the truth about families, that wanted to tell the truth about fragility. You know, I felt like there was a lot that I hadn't really seen necessarily, that showed the families can be both cruel and incredibly loving at the same time. And I felt like that was really important to me. And but I think had the show not, if I wasn't writing specifically for an Irish audience, I think I might have done something different. So in a funny way, we were all saying we're so excited for us to go out on Wednesday, because this is the audience that it's been geared to, but it's actually been on around the world already. So there's this strange thing about that.
Yeah, and well, to get it right for the Irish audience, I think is the real achievement, because, you know, we are critical, and especially in a subject matter so close to home, but you handle it so well. The characters deliver that so well. It's really interesting. It gives all of the different, you know, it addresses things that maybe we haven't addressed before, but you deliver it in a way where it's not, oh, I can't watch that. It's actually, I want to watch it. I'm now interested. I want to know, you know, how she's going to handle this, how they're going to take that, etc. And which is, you know, a real credit to you and to all of you as a team, and to Paddy in terms of how this has been directed and shot, the whole look and feel of it. But Emma, for you, obviously you're with Element Pictures and such an incredible company, and Ed and Andrew and all that, you know what you're at, basically. So when Nancy mentioned there that it's already been tasted by audiences around the world, tell us a little bit about that. Obviously we know the audience at home are going to see it on Wednesday, March 1st, and that will go well, but so BritBox, who has shown it where around the world, and what's the feedback been?
Yeah, so it started off in the UK on BritBox, and BritBox is part of ITV, and ITV and BritBox have been in a sort of journey of evolution. So it will be on ITVX, which is the new kind of incarnation of BritBox, and then eventually it will be on the ITV main channel. So the interesting thing about being part of that family of channels is you get to sort of find a new audience 3 times. So that's kind of exciting for how we'll spread out in the UK. But it also, we sold to Canada, and it's been on in Canada and was really well reviewed. The Canadians loved it. It's on Sundance Channel in the US, so they bought it, and again we've got great press. Australia, New Zealand, South Africa. I mean, most of this, at this stage there's sort of, I mean, this is it's weird for us because most English-speaking territories have watched the show at this point, and it's the Irish audience that we want to engage with the most.
Yeah.
But you know, RT were very careful.
A little slow, maybe.
I think they were careful I think that it was just, I think they were careful that it wasn't going to hit. You know, I think it was going to go up against I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here, which was taking so much of the audience away that they decided they'd hold off. And so I think they were just careful about where they were going to schedule it, you know?
Yes.
It was actually, I mean, it was from enthusiasm, and they love it in RT. So it was really about minding it. And we do appreciate the care that they have taken. But we are so excited now.
Yeah, well, I think actually, do you know what? I think there's an acute awareness now and a sense of Irish storytelling and an appreciation of that. We can we can actually tell our stories about a lot of different subject matters now. And I think that Nancy, you know, your timing on this, even though it's been maybe 8 years of you working it to what, but I think the timing of when it's come out, and look, even from RT's point of view, I think the timing is good now. We're riding the crest of that wave of a key focus from our communities out there, the audiences out there. Once they tune into it, the main thing is for them to tune into that very first episode and hook in, but no doubt obviously it will be available afterwards as a nice little 8-part package, you know, for those who want to catch up on it. But ultimately, just to say congratulations to all of you on achieving this. I know the audience are going to love it. And best of luck with getting it out there. I know that the talent and all of you are also in consideration as well in terms of from the IFTA Awards point of view. So I wish you best of luck in that as well. But congratulations in getting it out there at this stage, and let the fanfare begin and the audience enjoy. So, and thank you for taking the time to talk to us.
Thank
you
you
so much.
and enjoy the show.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Anya.
Bye-bye now. Bye-bye.
Bye.